Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Justin. Thank you for clicking on this video. We talk horror, toys, collectibles. We do movie reviews, rankings, and recommendations, unboxings. We talk physical media. If any of that sounds like something you might be interested in, I'm gonna go ahead and link a few of my newest videos down below. Have a look at them. If you dig it, maybe think about subscribing. Now, among those videos that I'm gonna be linking below is the first episode in my Saw review and ranking series. I reviewed the first one. As well, in that review, I gave an introduction to the series. I talk a little bit about my experience with the Saw movies and kind of generally my experience with 2000s horror, which is a pretty big blind spot in my horror fandom or my horror journey. So hopefully within the next few months, I'll be revisiting a lot of those 2000s horror movies that I've sort of missed, that I can kind of look back at with a little bit more nostalgia instead of being a prickly little horror fan like I've been throughout the last couple decades. I haven't given a lot of those 2000s horror movies a chance. I know there's a lot of good gems in there, so I'm gonna be revisiting those. But I'm starting with Saw. So check out my review for the first movie, and now we're going to talk about Saw 2. Now, at the end of each review in this series, I'm gonna give my predictions for what may happen in the next installment of the series. I thought that'd be kind of fun to kind of give my speculations, my hopes, my expectations, what I think might happen in the next series. Sometimes my predictions will be right, sometimes of course they'll be wrong, but either way, I thought it'd spice up the reviews a little bit. So my predictions for the second movie, installment 2, was predictions for the next movie. I'm assuming, and I hope we see a lot more of the backstory of Jigsaw. Also hope they kind of dig into a couple of the past crimes that they talked about, like the guy with the razor wire and the guy in the room with like the shit on him, the flammable shit and the lighter. Maybe we get to find out a little bit who those people are, but that's the main thing I want to do. I need to know more about Jigsaw. I thought we'd see a little bit more backstory into those kills, the previous kills of Jigsaw that they kind of showed you a little bit in the investigation. The barbed wire guy, the guy with the fucking flammable stuff all over him with the lighter. We didn't get any of that, which was kind of disappointing. I guess that was just kind of showing you what Jigsaw is capable of. But what we did get is a little bit of backstory with the detectives involved, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the review. Also, another prediction is a lot more background on Jigsaw, which we did get some in this. It was basically an expansion on his character, but we didn't get a super deep dive into his background. So that's something, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the review. That's something that I didn't fully get, but I imagine as we go through the series, we'll continue to get a little bit more background on Jigsaw. So we'll wait and see about that. And this brings up something that was a little frustrating. I missed a little tidbit about the female detective that I kind of wanted to double check on, as well as something about Shawnee Smith's character, Amanda, and I've already blown it with 2 spoilers for the 3rd and 4th movies, so I'm just not going to deep dive, and I'm just going to have to deal with the fact, I guess, that some information just isn't going to be given, or maybe I'm just too dumb to see everything as it is, but I'm not going to research because I've already spoiled a couple major plot points that kind of really bummed me out. So it is what it is, but I'm not going to do any more Googling because I fucking spoiled some shit and it kind of pissed me off. And so now that we've got my expectations out of the way, let's talk about what actually happened in the movie, and let's get into what stood out for me in Saw 2. You know, the dialogue here is still as cliche and corny as ever.
That, I breathing down my neck, my son's budding criminal career, my wife's fucking divorce lawyers, I'd say my hands are pretty full, wouldn't you?
Jigsaw's motivations are still sort of highly questionable and debatable. Once again, we have a group of actors overacting in a disgusting room in a bleak movie devoid of any levity or color palette whatsoever. With the cherry on top being an overly dramatic, convoluted plot packed with cable TV tropes and second-rate storytelling.
Tough guy, could you steal now?
Please save me the after-school special.
And you know what? I actually kind of liked it. Now, one thing that stood out to me was definitely the production value. First of all, was a major step up, as well as just a little bit more polished script, and as far as the narrative being a little cleaner and the movie moving a little more smoothly. That's for sure. Now, James Wan didn't come back to direct this one like he did the first one. We have a new director, but carried over to this movie is James Wan's aesthetic, for better or for worse. We can talk about that here in a little bit. Darren Lynn Bousman brings in that rapid fire editing. the minimal color palette with high saturations, with the browns and greens and the really high grain as far as the cinematography is concerned. And once again applied is that super choppy, kinetic, Saw style editing. It doesn't just show you something in this movie. It's got to flip around, zoom in, zoom back, go black and white, flicker 5 times, freeze frame, and then slow zoom into like
jigsaw piece.
Which is kind of funny looking back on that editing style now, but for better or for worse, the aesthetic of Saw is back and it's been cranked up a notch, but everything just looks a little more polished. Especially the set design looks a lot better. In the first movie, the set design of that bathroom just honestly looked really cheap. It was extremely obvious that it was a set. And in this movie, it's not great. You can still tell we're dealing with a lower budget movie, but overall, the production value, the lighting, the aesthetics of the movie definitely were quite a step up. And as well, as I said, the narrative is cleaned up a little bit here. In the first one, although they were spinning a lot of plates, you still kind of got all the information that you were needed, but the characters were really thin. In this one, the story, the characters were beefed up a little bit, a little more character development, and the story just seemed to move a lot smoother, which I did like. Like I said in my review for the first Saw movie, movies like this, these high concept horror movies, need a good story, need a good through line to really make all the gore aspects work, because if this movie was just wall-to-wall gore, you'd end up being a little bored. So I do appreciate the expanded story and the expanded character development, particularly with Donnie Wahlberg's character and his son, because when you go back to the first movie and you're talking about Cary Elwes' character and the relationship to his family, you never saw them together a whole lot. Cary Elwes would talk about his family and show him pictures, and then they'd cut to the kidnapping scenes, which seemed a little random to me in that first movie. They didn't really resonate with me hard. But when you go in the second movie and you introduce Donnie Wahlberg's character, you build him up, you build up the relationship with his son. Even though the relationship isn't great, you can tell the love is there, and it really helped actually seeing them interact, seeing that they have even a troubled relationship. You could tell that he loves his son, he wants the fucking best for him. Because of that, the story just moves a little quicker, you're a little bit more invested. The first movie really lagged a bit, especially in that middle part. Another thing that stood out to me as a pretty big positive was bringing back the character of Shawnee Smith and expanding her character. I really dug her. I like her a lot as an actress. I think she's great. She's probably the strongest actor, in my opinion, in the whole movie. In the first and second movie so far, she's just great. She's not hamming it up too much. Her performance is pretty subtle. There's a lot of sympathy for her. I really like what they did with her character. I like the idea that she passed his test and he's sort of putting his faith in her. Although I don't know if I was misconstruing exactly what happened. Did he make her cut her wrists? When they first show her in the movie, they show her cutting her wrists, so I was thinking, okay, Jigsaw realized that she had cut her wrists. He thought, nope, she still hasn't learned her lesson. She's got to come back for round 2. But then they cut to him and he's watching her do it. So
I found myself a father, a leader, a teacher.
You must meet death.
and so he like wanted her to do that. He made her cut her wrists, I guess, to make her closer to death. I don't really, that was a little muddled to me. Maybe they'll explain that a little bit further. Another thing I really enjoyed was them expanding sort of the whole operation, going to the warehouse. It was really awesome to see them go back towards the end of the movie and end up where the first one started, in that grimy little bathroom. You can see the corpse of Lee Winnell's character, which was awesome. With a lot of these long-running franchises, continuity can be a really big issue. So I really respect the fact that they're trying to keep some kind of through line so you have a cohesive experience moving from film to film. So at least on the second film, they're doing that, and I really appreciated that. Now let's get into what came up short in Saw 2. The first minor issue that I had, which didn't end up being a big detriment to the movie itself, but there was a lot of disposable characters that were kind of just cannon fodder for being killed off, which was fine, minor nitpick. But one thing that did bother me was how the third act devolved into this kind of cheap chase sequence when they turned that big bustle-bound guy and sort of used him as like a slasher type character, like he's fucking Jason Voorhees or something. The whole last act was just built on this guy lumbering from room to room. I always hate when movies do that. In the third act of a movie, they have some injured characters or a couple characters going from room to room while somebody's chasing them throughout hallways. And maybe it just is kind of a budget restraint thing where they only have a small location, but it always bothers me when they spend the last 15 or 20 minutes spinning the wheels with some indoor on-foot chase sequence. I felt like if they had an extra 15 minutes to burn, an extra couple shooting days, use it on the other characters. I understand they kind of built the third act on him trying to get the numbers from the people, but I felt like it would have been much, much better if they would have let a couple more characters go towards the traps. I know they don't want to like overdo the traps and overdo the gore, but I would rather see more traps than just some big guy running around the halls trying to chase people. They could have offed a couple more people with traps. It would have been more suspenseful with dealing with a couple more traps. So that was a big complaint, is that third act on foot chase sequence. And also Jigsaw's motivations are again a little loose, a little iffy for me. I guess Jigsaw just doesn't take too kindly to mind altering substances and people expanding their mind a little bit. He really hates these drugs, man. Before we get into my rating, let's talk a little bit about what I want to see in Saw 3. I definitely hope we find a little bit more out about Wahlberg's character, especially the relationship with Detective Carey, his son's death. I think I heard them mention something about a son that had died or something. I don't know if I heard that right, but I really want to know about that. I want him to continue that through line with the detective. Like I said, thread the movies together, keep the continuity going. I really want to see that happen. And I still need to know more about Jigsaw. Was he married? Does he have kids? What's his job like? I want him to expand on his character. I also hope they kind of expand a little bit more into him and Amanda's relationship. Does he really fully trust her? Is there still some like weird thing? Is it still a test? Is he using her? You just don't know. So they kind of set it up like he's just gonna die. Obviously he's not gonna die in this movie. At least I don't think he's gonna be dead in the third one. I like the idea that they're carrying Amanda's character on to kind of continue his work. That sounds really cool. I'm into it. I really hope to see more of that, a little more background between those two. I want to see how their relationship started. I want to see how they got talking. I want to know how much she knows. I want to see those scenes of him teaching her maybe to build traps. I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens with their relationship and a little bit of background on that. I know we're not going to follow these same handful of characters all the way through, but like I said, I really do appreciate that they're trying to keep some kind of continuity. So overall, I really hope to see that in the following movies. Now again, on the next movie, Saw 3, it is again written by Lee Winnell and directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, so I like to see the consistency of writers. I haven't looked into the writers of the other movies, but so far the first three are written by Lee Winnell, which is awesome. I love that continuity, so I hope that kind of continues, because that's really, to me, what's kind of setting this series apart, which I really like. You know how fragmented Nightmare on Elm Street is, and the Halloween series and Friday the 13th. Those series are so fragmented that it's like crazy. The timelines are all fucked up. So I like to see that the continuity is doing well in this series. Now let's go ahead and get into my rating for Saw 2. My rating system is going to consist of a few aspects and then an overall score. The first of which being technical. Technical, I gave this movie a 6.5. Now, when we talk about the technical aspects, we're talking about the cinematography, the set design, the sound design. All of those did have quite a big step up from the first movie. But when we talk about the camera work and the cinematography, the color is still really bleak. The lighting is dark. The color palette is extremely limited. The editing is choppy and really, really highly stylized, which isn't my bag. This is my score. This is the way I feel about it. The sound design is something that I do enjoy about these movies, especially during the scenes with the traps, all the little sort of mechanical sounds. I do like that, but as far as the cinematography and the look and the camera work, it's not my favorite. So technical gets a 6.5. Not horrible, but not great. Next, we're going to talk about the story and the characters. Although we are seeing a step up as far as the character development and things like that, these are still pretty cliched characters. We're still not getting a lot of depth. It's all still pretty surface level. And as far as the story goes, we're still not getting a lot of background on Jigsaw, why he's doing this. It's still a pretty limited storyline, spread pretty thin over the runtime. For story and characters, we're going to give it a 6.5. Gore score, not high, just like the first one, not an incredible amount of gore. Some decent scenes with the wrist trap, the gunshot to the head, him ripping the fucking thing off the back of his neck. Pretty cool, but still below average. Maybe to normies that would be pretty high, but for me, I'm an experienced gore hound, all right? So I gave Gore a 4. That leaves an overall score of 6, which is just above average. These movies aren't amazing, guys. They're just a little bit of fun. They're not going to get a super high critical score from me. Maybe the other ones will really impress me. I'm sorry if that score is low. I apologize. Going through each of my categories, I tried to score these things the best I could and be subjective, but it is what it is. Guys, that is my review for Saw 2. Stay tuned for the rest of my reviews in the series. I'll be reviewing all the rest of the movies and eventually ranking all of them after I see Spiral from the Book of Saw. So guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Stay weird, be yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
I love movies. Gosh, I love movies. I love watching them, and I love making them.